Oh, right. Okay. Hmm, goodness me. Right. So everyone who I expected to be out this morning in their Aviary has been out and done it, and they're going out shortly again. Rags, however, isn't. So I'm going to explain some things. Now, this is going to touch on some subjects that I need to be careful of, just because the people that are associated around the subject, which is, I can't explain the aviary without explaining why. And unfortunately, that means bringing up some issues that I see across the country. A lot of these people don't like me talking and have already tried to shut me up. So I just need to be careful. That's all. Um, right, aviaries. Okay, so the reason why I don't go for aviaries here is because it's not part of the plan for the resident flock. Now, do remember that what we have is a permanent resident flock who have issues themselves, and what I'm doing is addressing those issues and putting them back to where they should be, which is independent, free-thinking ravens who exhibit raven behavior, not pet behavior. So that's the reason why Rags won't use this aviary. So the reason why Rags won't use this aviary is because he has spent a long, long time with me. So 4 and a bit years now he's been with me. 4 years, I think he's been with me. Um, in that time, I don't train him, but in that time, what he's done is developed to become a raven. So he is not a pet. He is not a toy. He's not something of my creation. He's his own independent thinking being. Now that means that he can't cope with aviaries because he sees it as a enclosed space, a claustrophobic space that he just can't cope with because he is a raven. And I can't emphasize that enough. So, normally, ravens don't really cope with captivity. I'm just going to be frank about that. So, unless it's done correctly. So, what you've got people who have birds in aviaries, but they go out for free flights, they do things, they're exercised, they do all of the right things, right? Now they're fine, they really are fine, and I've touched on it before in the film about there are very, very, very good carers of ravens who have deliberately gone out and got their ravens, but their maintenance and care is so high. Now, I'm not talking about these people because I'm dealing with the damaged area of this. I'm dealing with the people who keep birds in conditions that basically, I'm just going to be frank, aren't just not acceptable. I mean, just not acceptable. And it's normally through lack of understanding of the subject that you're dealing with. Um, so an example here is, as I said, Rags can't do the aviary for those reasons. Is because Rags is a big wild bird. He loves his big spaces. He loves his hikes. He's working out his free flight right now. His free flight is not here at the moment. His free flight is out on his field, which is a massive expanse of land. And that's where we're going with Rags. Now, the reason I'm doing it with him that way is because Rags is 50% domestic and 50% raven, but the 50% raven is raven. He knows he's a raven, he behaves like a raven, he thinks like a raven, but with the added bonus of having a luxury life the other 50% of his time. Because he is a pet industry bird, that is acceptable for him. Now, Frith came to me at 6 years old. So Frith had had a life prior to being with me, which was an aviary bird. So now Frith will go and use this aviary outside, and she's quite comfortable because that's where she comes from, that's her background. Now, unfortunately, because Frith was an aviary bird, what she actually has is the opposite of Rags. Rags doesn't like enclosed spaces, Frith does like enclosed spaces. Now, that is born about through conditioning of birds. So it might be accidental conditioning, it might be conditioning deliberately, it might be conditioning through negligence, but it is still conditioning birds. So where Frith is now is she is a pet bird who can't cope with big spaces, so she's an agoraphobic. She can only cope with spaces that are defined by either walls or my limitation that I put on her. That I don't find acceptable. So what I'm doing with Frith is I'm undoing that conditioning that she's had and engineering her conditioning to be like rags, to accept open spaces like a normal raven would, to be able to process the world like a normal raven does, and to be able to engage in the world in that manner, rather than her being owned by me as a pet, a display object, and something to, go, oh, look at what I've got. I've got a raven, which I don't want. They are highly intelligent, highly complex creatures and deserve an awful lot more than just being chucked in an aviary because the people don't understand what they're doing. So what I'm seeing in the UK and what disturbs me in the UK a lot is that people go out and buy these 5-foot wingspan ravens, and with huge amounts of intelligence, with just the vast amount of needs that you need to meet. And these people go out and buy them because they've got X amount of money. They can just go out and buy them with zero thought for actually the care and maintenance of these amazing, amazing birds. So I'm finding in the UK it has become common practice now to buy a pet raven, put it in an aviary that is normally too small, and that's it, done, job done. And just go out and interact with them, and that's it. And that's their life. That's what they have. Normally, the aviaries are too small for them to attain sustained flight. In fact, I haven't come across an aviary that is able to give them sustained flight. I'll go on to this in a second, why this is absolutely key to survival. So my logic here just doesn't compute to me in my head why you would go out and buy an animal that is capable of flight and then think to yourself, or not think to yourself, this bird needs to attain flight. That's a bizarre notion. Go and get a dog or a cat that lives on the ground. If you're not capable of teaching your bird free flight capability or flight capability, then you shouldn't simply have that bird. There isn't an excuse. I'm sick of these excuses. If your environment that is not suitable, you're too urban to teach these birds to free flight. If your knowledge base is too slim, if you've bought it for totally personal reasons that are only associated with you and not the bird, or you just don't have the want or the will to get these incredible 5-foot wingspan birds up into the sky and flying and using the muscles that they need to, then you shouldn't simply have the bird. And in those situations, I honestly recommend to you that you put your heart to one side, accept, yes, I do love this bird, but we are doing it no favors. We are actually hastening its death and producing what can only be described as an ill bird. And I will explain why. So that's why that's why these aviaries, I'm not an aviary person. From my personal point of view, I don't agree that my guys need aviaries. In fact, Rags doesn't need an aviary, can't cope with an aviary because he has been evolved through my help to not be an aviary bird, and he will never live in an aviary. He'll never go in an aviary. I mean, he may go and use this briefly, but he's not going to enjoy it. And I want Frith, and this is no good for Frith. I mean, this aviary, while she's going out, yeah, great fun. But actually, all it's doing is reconditioning her to go, oh, right, well, I've got 4 walls, so I'm safe, so I don't need to think or engage my raven brain. So it's not doing her any favors in the long run. So this is why this is a very temporary structure. The structure was only put up for Rafe. And the only reason it's up for Rafe is because Rafe struggled with going back outside for PTSD reasons to do with his accident, association with pain, and all of the trauma that went alongside him when he arrived here from the outside. And that's all we're doing. And that's really worked with him. It's fantastic. He's really advanced this week in a very short space of time. Surprised me, actually, how well he's done. And it won't be long before we need to take that down again. So he could just go off and free fly backwards and forwards, and then he'll just leave at some point. Now, the aviary subject. So there are some really, really important factors when you take into consideration the species that you're looking after. Now, I assume it's a given, but it isn't a given. And it's very common practice in the UK for people to go out, try and look after these animals with absolutely no clue about what they're doing. or the reasons why it's really, really important to do these things and spend the time and dedicate your life to them, in order for them to attain high grade health, high grade welfare, and everything that they are capable of, is brought out of them as far as the raven goes. Now, it is all too clear in the UK that what people are doing is taking both pet industry birds and wild birds and turning them into pets. They're even going around calling them pets. Now, I'm just going to point some legalities out here to people who are making a serious mistake. Wild birds, even if they live in captivity, are classed as wild birds. They are never, in law, classed as pets. In fact, the law states that you should never consider them as pets. They can't be treated the same as pet birds. They have to be treated in a very different way. Please go and research the 2006 Welfare Act, and that will tell you all of the information that you need to know with regards to looking after wildlife, but also pet birds. Now, I am seeing in the UK, and this is where I'm finding I am really struggling, and I am calling these people out, but I'm having to be careful about it because these people are not liking me calling them out at all for their welfare failings. So there are many, many people in the UK, and there are many people I deal with in the UK who do it really, really well, right? Who look after their ravens really, really, really well, and I have no issue with them at all. Um, you know, some actually just cannot take their birds out. So what they do is they build bigger enclosures so that birds have much, much, much better welfare and existence. And that is fantastic because what you're doing is you're working within your remit, and your abilities to be able to produce something that is rather remarkable for the bird and helps the bird out. Now, the importance of a bird being able to fly, and this is overlooked. And it shocks me that this is overlooked because this is really basic stuff when you take on a bird. And it is basic stuff. Without this base knowledge and an understanding of this base knowledge, I'm just going to be frank, you shouldn't have the birds. All right, give them up because if you don't understand this, you are going to kill your birds. So I'm going to take ravens for the example because they're the biggest of the species of corvid. They have a huge wingspan, but health is also really important to them. And space is really important. So this is why it's a much more complicated factor when you have ravens in comparison to crows. Scale, size, everything is just bigger, right? Time frame is longer. The amount of effort you have to put in is more. So, ravens. When a raven is not able to go for sustained flight, now when I say sustained flight, what I mean is an afternoon of flying around. It doesn't need to be massively long, 2 mile long flies at all. But sustained flight is out and about using those wings and putting those wings under pressure. And the reason for that is to maintain muscle integrity. Without maintaining muscle integrity, the birds will genuinely become very, very ill in time. Now, it's unfortunately these situations are created normally by ignorance, so people don't even notice, sadly, when the bird is becoming ill or shut down. Now, with muscle development, flight muscle development particularly, there's multiple different levels of this that are really, really important to the bird's overall health. Now, if a bird doesn't use its wings on a regular basis, those muscles shrink. They suffer with it's really horrid. I mean, just go and research flight muscles not used, blah blah blah, and you'll find out. But I'm going to give you the basics. So when they're not used, they just shrink. They shrink in size, they shrink in capability, they shrink in stamina levels. They shrink. Sometimes to the point where the bird becomes unable to fly. Now, flight muscles are not just integral to the bird's flight, but they're integral to the bird's overall health. And I mean physical health. So when these muscles start to degrade, it causes other problems inside the body. And that can kill birds over the course of time. It also creates other issues alongside depression. Now, depression, particularly in ravens, will also kill a raven. And the reason depression kills a raven is because When ravens live in high anxiety or depressed states or just non-welfare driven conditions, their immune system starts to get compromised. So when they're faced with something their immune system needs to combat, it doesn't work quite as well, and these illnesses start building up and building up until you have an incredibly fragile bird that probably will maybe get to 16 at most and then just die. Unfortunately, actually, I will also say it's normally much younger than that, normally around about 6. So this is why you really have to make sure when you take on a raven, whether it's a rescue or whether it's a pet raven, that you have the space, the knowledge, the ability to read the bird, the the money to be able to produce whatever it needs at whatever moment in time, the acceptance that you're going to have to put however long that bird lives for aside to look after that bird. Now, I'm going to be really frank here. There are ravens in the UK at the moment that are living in such dreadful conditions. For experts like me, it's like watching a slow car accident and watching the death of these astonishing birds over the course of time, and it is horrible. It's horrible, particularly when you talk to those people and they throw it all in your face and tell you basically to get out and don't speak about this publicly because we'll get you in trouble. So basically, they're hiding behind a false narrative. Now, this is multiple different organizations, individuals, and all sorts of things. All right. Um, I'm actually struggling in the kind of industry that I'm dealing with right now. I'm struggling to find many people who are doing this in any shape or form right. So I'm going to give you examples of dreadful care. So dreadful care for ravens is keeping them in very small enclosures that are not suitable. So if the bird can't attain flight, and when I'm talking about flight, it can't sort of, fly around, go and use those wings for hours and hours in a day and fly around, even though it is boring just going around in circles for them. And I don't agree with that either, but it's better than nothing. But what I'm finding is ravens in sheds. What I'm finding is ravens. I mean, there was a raven in a rabbit hutch this year, which was absolutely appalling. Um, but actually, one of the most appalling situations I've come across this year is a raven locked in a bedroom. Now that's not acceptable. There is no point that you're ever going to explain that as being acceptable. It is not acceptable. Um, Ravens locked in houses because the people don't understand how to deal with the raven, or the raven is too difficult for them to deal with, is a death sentence. It is absolutely a death sentence. Natural light is really important to them, air is really important to them, but as I was explaining, keeping those muscles pumping and working is incredibly important. And without all of those things in place, the bird will very slowly just die. It'll become depressed, out of condition, and eventually will probably have a heart attack or just die of depression. Now, in those cases, I want these people to understand. All right, I understand that you might love the bird, but you're killing it with love, with this human. I love the bird, and it must. That's not appropriate. Sorry, it's not even a thing. All right, the thing here is the bird's interest at all costs. So if it means that actually you can't supply adequate care for the bird or knowledge or understanding, then your best option is to go and find somebody who genuinely can give those birds the better life that they deserve. You are dealing with highly intelligent, huge creatures who we owe a lot more than just locking them down into situations that we choose. That's not right. So I have an active campaign that goes on in the background to end these people. I sometimes use legal routes. I sometimes just apply pressure, but I want this stopped. I want all ravens that I come across to have a better life. Now, I'm perfectly happy to work with people with regards to this and try and help them understand how to improve their situation and understand what I've been going on about in this. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of those people just won't engage with me because it's too difficult, too costly, and it's come as too much of a shock that they've realised that they've got these birds and actually, oh my goodness me, This is going to be difficult because it means, as I've said before, no more holidays, no more going away at weekends, no more going away in the evening. You are with that bird. You are with that bird to make sure that that bird has the best life. And it's not a best life stuck in a house or stuck in a tiny aviary and never ever going out. I'm just going to put a very simple sentence to you, or a very simple sentiment to you. My guys here, my resident lot, have access to the Isle of Skye, right? They use my entire house as their aviary, not one room, my entire house as their aviary. That is their home. They live alongside me, and I live alongside them. And when they're not in their house, they're out in this massive environment, enjoying it, seeing what's out there, and engaging with their environment. There is zero comparison between that and a bird kept in a tiny, tiny aviary in some urban setting, or a bedroom in the same urban setting. There is no comparison. And that should be the base rule. If you cannot functionally look after these birds to the highest grade level needed, give them up. Because it's kinder to the bird, and the bird is very likely to not die at 10, but live an astoundingly long life in very happy, welfare driven, and good personal condition of the bird for the rest of its life. Now, if you're truly welfare driven people, if you truly care about what you're doing, then that's what you would do. If you make a choice not to do that, it says everything about who you are. You are not driven by welfare. You are not driven by understanding. And it is an absolutely appalling situation. Flight is really, really, really vital to all birds that are capable of flight. If they are not capable of flight, for example, Gilbert, then huge amounts of exercise are also needed to combat the issues of being flightless. And it just takes all of your time, which is why it frustrates me when I see these rescues, for example, with multiple different birds they've all kept in captivity. And I can tell you right now, there is no way those birds are being looked after to the highest degree needed, because there simply isn't the time. So that's why I'm not having aviaries. That's why it's not part of our plan. My plan is free thinking birds who can just use this all of the time in their own context and design their own world based around what I can offer them, which I legally have to offer them. You know, Rags and Faith legally have to stay with me, but I can give them as much as I possibly can give them in order for them to attain health, happiness, and the ability to explore, come home, dream, and do amazing things. And this is why, when you look at my guys, generally, apart from Rags, who's having a strop, they are extremely happy, very healthy looking birds, and are engaging with both me, their surroundings, and also you. It just actually quite obvious when you start looking, but you need to look